Good morning, dear students. Today in class plus one, we are going to start chapter 2 from the book Snapshot, The Address. And the outline of the chapter we have already discussed in previous video. This short story is a poignant account of a daughter who goes in search of her mother's belongings after the war. And which war it is talking about? It is Civil War in Holland. When she finds who that daughter, this daughter is of Mrs. S's daughter. Okay, Mrs. S's daughter. When she finds them, all these antique things, the objects evoked memories of her early life. Means these antique things they evoke memories of her early life with her mother. However, she decides to leave them all behind and resolve to move on. And lastly, she decided to leave all these antique things and keep on moving in life without these things of her mother. So we start from there. Do you still know me? I asked. Who that I? This is Mrs. S's daughter. And my dear children, I just tell you, this is narrator of the story. This daughter, this girl. Do you still know me? I asked. The woman looked at me searchingly, and this woman is who? Mrs. Darling. She had opened the door a chink, a jar open. I came closer. The girl came closer to lady and stood on the step. No, I don't know you. Knowingly, Mrs. Darling denied that she does not know that girl. I am Mrs. S's daughter. Then this narrator describes herself, or you can say introduce herself, that I am Mrs. S's daughter. She held her hand on the door as though she wanted to prevent it opening any further. Means the lady had opened the door half and put her hand on it to show that she does not want her to get into the house. Okay, her face gave absolutely no sign of recognition. Means the face of Mrs. Darling does not approve any symbol of positivity for Mrs. S's daughter. She kept staring at me in silence. Means Mrs. Darling continuously stares at Mrs. S's daughter. Perhaps I was mistaken, I thought. By observing all the activities or the body language of Mrs. Darling, Mrs. S's daughter thought that she was mistaken. I thought, perhaps it isn't her. For a moment, she thought that she is not the lady to whom she is known to. I had seen her only once because Mrs. S's daughter had seen Mrs. Darling only once, fleetingly, and that was years ago and many years ago. It was most probable that I had rung the wrong bell. Then she thought that I have knocked at the wrong door. The woman lets go of the door and stepped to the side. Mrs. Darling shut down the door and stepped to the side. She was wearing my mother's green knitted cardigan, means nightwear. Okay, at that moment, Mrs. S.'s daughter observed that Mrs. Darling was wearing a dress, night dress simply, or especially cardigan, that belongs to Mrs. S. The wooden buttons were rather pale from washing. Means the button of that cardigan were yellowish because of continuous washing. She saw that I was looking at the cardigan and half hid herself again behind the door. His assy daughter already, Mrs. Darling, sorry, Mrs. Darling has hid herself behind the door. But I knew now that I was right. But after observing the cardigan, the daughter of Mrs. S was right that she is on the correct address. Well, you knew my mother, I asked. Then Mrs. S.'s daughter asked her that you knew my mother. Have you come back? At that moment, as she told you knew my mother, that moment the lady said, have you come back? Said the woman. Then Mrs. Rowling said, have you come back? Means during the war time in Holland, some families, some people, they shifted from one place to another place, and in which Mrs. S was one of them. So Miss Darling said this question to her, have you come back? I thought that no one had come back. Okay, only me. Then Miss daughter said, only me means only I have come, not others. A door opened and closed in the passage behind her. A musty smell emerged. Okay, musty means a very bad smell. When the door was half open, when they were talked to each other on the doorstep only, at that moment, the daughter of Mrs. S smelled something badly. I regret I cannot do anything for you. Mr. Darling said that I am sorry, I cannot do anything for you. I have come here specially on the train. I wanted to talk to you for a moment. Then the daughter of Mrs. S told Mrs. Darling that I have come here for special reason just to talk to you. Talk to you. Talk with you. Okay. It is not convenient for me now. Mrs. Darling pays an excuse that it's not the correct time to talk to me now, said the woman. For I can see you another time. Means I can meet you, I can talk to you next time. Right now I'm not free. The time does not suit me likewise. These are excuses given by Mrs. Darling. She nodded and cautiously closed the door as though no one inside the house should be disturbed. And after saying this, Mrs. Darling closed the door. I stood where I was on the step. Means wherever the girl was, she stood over there, and neither she was asked to come in, nor she was asked to have a you can say glass of water even. Okay, the curtain in front of the bay window moved. Then the curtain of the window moved. Someone stared at me and would then have asked what I wanted. Then you can say there was somebody, and that is Mrs. Darling's daughter, and said, "Oh, nothing." The woman would have said it was nothing. The woman means Mrs. Darling already had said it was nothing. That this girl means Mrs. Ass's daughter was nothing. I looked at the nameplate again to confirm herself. Mrs. Ass's daughter observed the nameplate. Darling, it said. On the plate it was written Darling in black letters on white enamel. On white paint in black letter Darling was written, and on the jam a bit higher the number 46. This is the address, my dear children. 46 Marconi Street. And earlier on the place of Darling there had been named Mrs. S. Mrs. S, number 46 Marconi Street. As I walked slowly back to the station, now after getting negative response from Mrs. Darling, the daughter of Mrs. S thought it's better to go back to house or to go back to my respective place. So as I walked slowly back to the station, when she was going to the station, I thought about my mother. She reminds about her mother, who had given me the address years ago, who had given this address to her many years ago when she was alive. It had been in the first half of the war, when she gave this address to her. I was home for a few days and it struck me immediately that something or some other about the rooms had changed. Now the girl is reminding about her mother and first half of the war, civil war. I missed various things. The girl missed various things. My mother was surprised. I should have noticed so quickly. Means very fast. The girl noticed everything. Then she told me about Mrs. Darling. At that, she only once Mrs. S's daughter has met Mrs. Darling. So that moment she was reminding. I had never heard of her, but apparently she was an old acquaintance of my mother. Miss Mrs. Darling had been an old acquaintance of Mrs. S, whom he had not seen for years. She had suddenly turned up, she suddenly came in their life and renewed their contact very fast. Okay, since then she had come regular days. After that, Mrs. Darling became the regular customer of Mrs. S's house. Every time she leaves here, she takes something home with her. So every time this lady, Mrs. Darling, takes something with her, said my mother. She took all the table silver in one go. See, one example has been given. It's very clear whenever she comes to Mrs. House, she never leaves the house without taking anything. So she took all the table silver in one go, okay, and then the antique plates that hung there. After packing all these tablecloths, one antique plate was hanging there. She had trouble lugging those large vases, or large vases means tablecloths. And I'm worried she got a crick in her back, and even she got some crick. Some crick means some pain in her back, but she did not leave that thing over there from the crockery. Means from the crockery means the load or the burden of the crockery so much that she got crick in her back, but she did not leave that bag at Mrs. S's house. She took all the table silver and the antique plates in one go. Then my mother shook her head pityingly. I would never have dared ask her. Means this girl, Mrs. S's daughter and Mrs. S, both of them means mother and daughter, they never have dared to ask her why she is taking all the things with her. She suggested it to me herself. She even insisted to take things with her. She wanted to save all my nice things. Means Mrs. S thought that Mrs. Darling wants to save all these antique things with her. If we have to leave here, we shall lose everything, she says. In reply, Mrs. S says to her daughter that we need to leave this house, okay, And if we do not give these things to Mrs. Darling, everything will be useless. So it's better to give or to gift all these antique things at least to a lady who can take care of these nice things. By thinking so, Mrs. S never uh, protest of getting or of taking all these things from her. Then, have you agreed with her that she should keep everything? I asked. Mrs. S.'s daughter asked her mother, have you agreed with her? Have you agreed? Means, do you have some kind of agreement with her that she should keep everything? That she will keep all the nice things nicely with her? As if that's necessary, my mother cried, it would simply be an insult to talk like this. Then, being a kind person, Mrs. S never put this question because it will harm her somehow, and it is just an insult to talk like this. And think about the risk she is running. What kind of risk she is running? That she takes all the things with her and she takes care of all the antique things at her home. Each time she goes out of her door with a full suitcase or bag. Means every time Mrs. Darling comes to Mrs. S's house, and she leave the house with a full suitcase or a bag. Okay, now next one. My mother seemed to notice that I was not entirely convinced. She looked at me reprovingly, and after that we spoke no more about it. Means that was the day when first time the girl asked to her mother that why did this lady take all the things with her, why don't you refuse to her, like all these questions they were being put by the girl to her mother. And that was the last communication on this topic. After that everything was approved and they did not talk on this topic anymore. Meanwhile, I had arrived at the station. Now, having thought a lot about her pastime, the girl reached at the station without having paid much attention to things on the way. Okay, I was walking in familiar places. Why it was familiar places? Why these all familiar places? Because already she had spent many years in this locality. Again, for the first time since the war, means after the war, she is just reminding all the things because she had spent many years in this locality before the war. But I did not want to go further than was necessary. But the girl does not want to cross the limit or of her acquaintance or imagination or attachment to the place and the things. I didn't want to upset myself. She does not want to get upset with the sight of streets and houses full of memories from a precious time. Means this place, this locality, all these streets, shops, antique things, house, people, all they were known to Mrs. S's daughter as she had spent many years here in this locality before the war. But right now she does not want to spend many you can say a remembrance or much time on this particular locality having thought about past time. Now in the train back I saw Mrs. Darling in front of me. When she was coming back, she met Darling sitting in front of her again as I had the first time I met her. It was the morning after the day my mother had told me about her. Now again she is reminding. This is not the reality that she was sitting. So in her past time when she was having a meeting with Mrs. Darling in the train. I had got up late and coming downwards. I saw my mother about to see someone. My mother means Mrs. S was meeting with somebody outside, a woman with a broad back. Means broad back means healthy woman. So Mrs. S was having a meeting or was having a talking with the lady who has a broad back. And who's that lady? That lady is Mrs. Darling. Okay. So today we stop here, my dear children. We will continue reading part of this chapter in next video. Fine. Thank you. Have a good day.